For a long time, I didn't realize that something was wrong. At first, there were little things that I ignored, and which I couldn't believe until the very end. But at one point, something terrible happened. I wanted to kill them both. And you will never believe how it all ended. Stay until the very end to find out. We weren't just friends. Travis was closer than that, closer than blood. We fought beside each other, bled beside each other, and when we made it back home, we bought land and built our houses side by side like brothers who'd seen too much to live apart. Every beam in my home, every nail in his, was something we drove in ourselves. There's a bond that forms in the dirt and sweat of combat that doesn't break easy. Or so I thought. That night on the porch changed something. Just the three of us, me, Sarah, and Travis, enjoying the breeze, letting the whiskey take the edge off the long week. I caught a glance, a fleeting moment between them. Her eyes flicked toward him, then away. And the way he looked back, it wasn't friendly. It had weight, hunger. I blinked it off and poured another drink, telling myself I was imagining it. But I wasn't. Not really. Later, while Sarah was upstairs, I found the bottle. Tucked in the back of the cabinet, Yamazaki 18, rare, expensive, something Travis and I used to keep for milestones. Sarah hated whiskey. She once gagged just sniffing it. When I asked her where it came from, she didn't miss a beat. Said it was from a colleague. Some office gift, no big deal. But she didn't look at me when she said it. I let it slide, but something settled deep in my gut, and it wasn't going away. The next Friday, Travis bailed on our usual night out. Claimed he had a doctor's appointment, migraines or something vague and harmless. I didn't question it until I parked at the bar and saw her car. Same color, same scratches on the bumper, same parking sticker on the windshield. Parked right next to his truck. I didn't go inside. Didn't need to. I drove home with that same knot in my stomach growing tighter by the minute. The next day, I asked Travis how the doctor went. He paused. Not long, but just enough. It was all I needed. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Sarah breathing steady beside me, and felt something inside me start to snap. I needed answers, real ones. So the next time she left for one of her manicure appointments, I headed to Travis's place. I still had the spare key, but I didn't need it. Door was unlocked like always. That's how deep our trust ran, or used to. I walked inside and froze. Upstairs the shower was running. There was a woman's voice, soft, familiar, laughing. In the bedroom, I saw one of my old shirts on the floor. One I hadn't worn in years but had given him when we were patching the roof. The air was warm with steam, but it felt cold to me. I didn't stick around. Just turned and left before my hands could make decisions my brain would regret. Back home, I slammed my fist into the garage wall so hard I felt something give in my hand. Blood ran down my wrist, but it didn't hurt the way it should have. The kids came running out, giggling, asking what happened. I smiled, told them it was nothing, and wrapped the wound before they could see the truth written on my face. The next day, I started making changes. I installed a small camera in Sarah's car, added call recording software, and synced her GPS to my phone. I told myself it wasn't paranoia anymore. It was confirmation. I wasn't crazy. I just needed the truth to show its face without lies wrapping around it. A week later it did. Her GPS pinged at a motel off Route 16. I drove there, parked across the lot, and waited. 10 minutes later, she walked out of a room with Travis right behind her. They were smiling, his hand brushing her back. I didn't confront them. I just snapped photos. 4 clear shots, enough to speak louder than anything they could ever say to my face. The next morning, I found Travis alone in his backyard. He was fixing the grill, the one we built together, like nothing in the world had changed. I dropped the photos on the table and stepped back. He stared at them, then looked at me with something between shame and panic. Said it was just once. I didn't raise my voice, didn't throw a punch. Just said, then I get to get revenge just once. He went pale like someone had kicked out the floor beneath him. But I didn't strike that day. Not yet. Some things take time. And now I had it. The morning after that confrontation, I woke with my heart still pounding, like a drum in my chest. The taste of betrayal and anger lingering on my tongue, refusing to be washed away by sleep. I shuffled through the day with a mix of determination and dread, feeling every step as if I were walking on shards of broken glass, each one a reminder of the lies that had been fed to me. While I was in the kitchen making coffee, a routine that suddenly felt too mundane to be real, my phone buzzed with an unexpected message from one of Sarah's close friends. The text was curt, but its undercurrent of urgency led me to meet him in a quiet corner of town, where secrets were shared in hushed tones away from prying eyes. We sat in a dimly lit diner booth that smelled faintly of coffee grounds and stale cigarettes, and he slid a small flash drive across the table to me as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I could see his eyes darting around, clearly nervous, and he muttered something about truths that needed to be seen, barely above a whisper, before hastily leaving the booth without a second glance. Back at home, with the flash drive resting in my palm like a ticking time bomb, I hesitated only a moment before plugging it into my old laptop. There, in the cold light of the screen, were hundreds of messages and emails in which Sarah had called me a fool, a term so loaded with contempt that each keystroke seemed to sting, echoing every lie that had been woven into the fabric of our once shared life. The revelations burned through me as I scrolled past message after message that confirmed my deepest suspicions. And I knew that I couldn't let this slide into a void of unpunished deceit. I contacted a lawyer, one of the few who still carried a hint of honor, and we worked quickly, gathering every digital scrap that would serve as evidence against the woman who had shattered my trust. With every document scrutinized and every signature compared, we uncovered a labyrinth of forgeries. Sarah had manipulated house documents, rewriting our shared history as if it were a script meant to trap me in a nightmare of her own making. The evidence was damning, and the feeling of betrayal turned from a simmering anger to an all-consuming blaze that urged me to expose every single lie. I compiled the evidence into a neat, unyielding dossier, a modern testament to the betrayal that had poisoned our lives, and sent it directly to the director of Travis's company. I wasn't the kind to revel in chaos for chaos's sake, but that day, every calculated keystroke carried the weight of my wounded pride and the silent promise of eventual reckoning. Within a week, the repercussions of my actions reverberated like an echo throughout Travis's life as he received the news of his dismissal, the corporate world he had built coming crashing down in a cascade of irreversible consequences. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, the evidence spread before me like a roadmap to revenge, each piece a calculated step toward a future where every betrayal would be met with an equal measure of justice. Even as the reality of Travis's firing settled in, I couldn't help but feel a twisted mixture of triumph and despair, knowing that the actions I'd taken had only deepened the wounds rather than healing them. Every time I looked at the dossier, every time I remembered his flinched response and the casual way he had tried to dismiss the truth, the anger in me surged anew, raw and unfiltered. I worked through the night, connecting dots and solidifying the chain of evidence that would serve as the foundation for the reckoning I was slowly building. And as dawn crept in, painting the sky with shades of gray and gold, I realized that the game was only just beginning, the stakes higher than ever, and there was no turning back from the path I had chosen. Sarah's birthday came a week later, and I knew I couldn't let it pass like nothing had happened. Not after everything. I wasn't going to scream or throw plates or fall to pieces like some broken man. I was going to make her feel it. Every lie, every touch she shared with Travis. Every moment she looked me in the eye and fed me bullshit like it was love. So I wrapped it up like a present. Neat, sharp, like the edge of a blade. A simple box, gift wrapped with care. Inside was everything. Printed texts where she mocked me, photos of the motel parking lot, a voice recorder with one of their calls saved to the device, her laughing while she told Travis I'd never figure it out. I sealed the box, tied it with a white ribbon, and wrote her name in my cleanest handwriting. It looked like a real gift, and in a way it was. That night, friends and family filled the living room, laughing, drinking, unaware that the floor was about to give out beneath them. Sarah wore the dress I'd bought her 2 years ago, the one she said made her feel elegant. I watched her float around the room, playing the part so well it almost made me forget for a second. Almost. When it was time for the gifts, I handed her mine last. She smiled, wide, bright, rehearsed, and peeled back the paper like she thought she was about to unwrap a diamond necklace or some designer perfume. The second she opened the lid, her face drained like all the air had been pulled from the room. For a few seconds, the only sound was the rustle of tissue paper and the low hum of a confused crowd trying to read the moment. She grabbed the recorder first, turned it on without thinking, and her voice filled the room. Laughing, taunting, calling me so clueless it's cute. Then came the photos, then the printouts. The room froze. No one moved. And Sarah, still gripping the box, looked at me with wide, furious eyes. But it wasn't fury from guilt. It was fury at being exposed. She stormed out, shoved the front door open so hard it slammed against the wall, and the laughter from the recording was still echoing behind her. I stood in the middle of the stunned guests, some looking at me, others at the door she'd left swinging in the wind. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. They all knew what they saw. The mask had come off and the perfect little wife routine was dust on the floor. An hour later, I heard her outside, sobbing, pounding on the front door with the desperation of someone who wasn't sorry, just afraid of the fallout. I didn't move. The locks were already changed. I'd timed it perfectly with the lawyer. When the police cruiser pulled up and the officer handed her the warrant, one tied to the forged property documents and bank activity, she screamed. The sound didn't shake me. It felt far away, like something happening in a movie I wasn't watching anymore. They didn't cuff her, but they didn't leave her with much dignity either. She sat on the porch steps, head in her hands as neighbors peeked out through blinds. She had always been so careful about appearances, keeping everything perfectly curated. But now the neighborhood saw the cracks she tried to hide, and the truth was louder than any excuse she could spin. I watched from upstairs through the narrow gap in the curtains, not because I needed to see it, but because I needed to be sure I felt nothing. The next few days passed like a quiet storm. No more yelling, no more lies, just the hum of consequences setting into motion. Friends stopped calling. Some didn't know what to say. Others didn't want to take sides. But a few, the real ones, made it clear where they stood. And I didn't have to explain a damn thing to them. Travis was gone from town. Word was he moved back in with his parents 2 counties over after losing his job. Sarah, though, stayed close, probably hoping to twist things back in her favor somehow. She sent messages, tried to get the kids through her sister, even showed up at my lawyer's office twice. But none of it worked. The locks were changed, the accounts frozen, and the court dates set. She could cry, she could scream, but there was no way back in. Meanwhile, I started clearing the house. Her things went in boxes, not thrown, not burned, just gone. Room by room, I took back my space. The silence was heavier without the kids for a few days, but it was cleaner too. No more pretending. No more pretending I didn't know what I saw, what I heard, what I felt when I found that goddamn bottle of whiskey that started it all. I kept it though, the Yamazaki, unopened. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that trust, once shattered, never gets put back the same way. By the end of the week, the house felt different. Not warm, not cold, just mine again. The kids came back that weekend, and their laughter hit different. I grilled out back while they played tag in the yard, the sound of them yelling and laughing washing over me like something close to peace. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I let myself breathe without feeling like I was choking on something invisible. But as I stood out there, flipping burgers and watching smoke rise into the evening sky, I knew this wasn't over. Sarah wasn't the type to disappear quietly, and there was still one more piece left in this game, one final move I hadn't played yet. I started watching her without her knowing, not out of obsession, but necessity. The kind of necessity that comes when someone rips your life in half and still walks around like they own a piece of it. Sarah had lost her grip, that much was clear. After the party and the police visit, I thought maybe she'd retreat, regroup, maybe even show some damn shame. But she didn't. She got sneakier. The messages didn't stop, just shifted tone, from apologies to accusations to empty nostalgia. One day she'd text, "I miss our mornings." And the next, "You're poisoning the kids against me." She didn't understand it wasn't poison. It was truth. And it was long overdue. I kept her car under surveillance. Camera under the dash, GPS tracking still live, calls recorded automatically. It wasn't just about catching her doing something stupid. It was about control, about not getting blindsided again. One night, a week after the birthday fallout, the GPS pinged in a parking lot out near an industrial zone. Not a place you just stop by on accident. It was late, past 11. I drove out, lights off the last few blocks, and parked far enough to stay unnoticed. Her car was there, not alone. A black SUV idled nearby, windows tinted so dark they mirrored the dim streetlights. I didn't recognize the driver, but Sarah was there, standing outside, pacing. She was talking fast, agitated, her hands cutting through the air in that way she always did when cornered. I watched from the shadows, taking photos, not because I needed proof of this, whatever this was, but because I wanted to catalog every move. Her desperation smelled like gasoline. She was trying to fix something, cover something, and I had a feeling it wasn't about me or the kids anymore. Something else was unraveling in her world, and I wanted to know what the hell it was. The SUV pulled away after a few tense minutes, and she stood there for a moment, just staring into the night like it might hand her a miracle. Then she got back in her car and drove off fast. The next morning, I pulled the audio from her car. Took a few hours to clean up the background noise, but the voice was clear enough. She was begging the man, not Travis, someone else, not to go to the police. She kept repeating, "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." The hell did that mean? What wasn't supposed to happen? I played the recording again, trying to hear between the lines, trying to catch the tremor in her voice. She wasn't scared of being caught. She was scared of what came next. That told me there was more. Something I hadn't seen yet. I started digging. Bank records, real estate transfers, any legal or financial threads I could pull. Found a storage unit under her maiden name. Rented 3 months ago. Paid 6 months in advance, in cash. That was enough to set off alarms. I went there the next day with a bolt cutter and gloves. The place reeked of damp wood and dust. Inside, among random boxes of old photos and dresses, was a fireproof safe. Heavy, locked. Took it home and cracked it open with a crowbar in 2 hours of quiet, careful force. Inside were folders, some filled with fake IDs, 2 with her face, different names. Others had documents with forged signatures. Not mine, not Travis's, but connected to our property. There were papers tied to small business loans I'd never taken out, all pointing back to my name. She had been building something. Not just an affair, a backdoor escape plan. One where I took the fall, where she walked away clean, maybe even with a payout. I sat there for a long time, staring at the forged documents. Not angry, not even shocked anymore. Just tired in a way that felt permanent. I handed copies of everything over to my lawyer the next day, made sure the bank accounts and real estate offices had alerts on my information. The deeper I went, the more I saw that Sarah hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd been playing a long con. Even while she was kissing me goodbye at the door, she was setting up the chessboard to ruin me if things ever turned sideways. That kind of betrayal cuts deeper than sex. It poisons every memory, every smile, every goddamn "I love you." But the worst part wasn't what she tried to do. It was that she almost got away with it. A few nights later, she tried to get into the house again. Said she forgot some jewelry. I watched her through the camera feed as she stood on the porch, pretending to cry, trying the handle even though she had to know it was locked. I didn't go to the door. I just watched as she walked back to her car, defeated. But it wasn't over. I could see it in her face. She was planning something. And I was almost curious to find out what, because whatever she thought she had left in her corner, it wasn't going to save her. The knock came around noon on a gray Wednesday. Short, sharp, deliberate. I expected a package or maybe a neighbor, but instead, a woman stood there, maybe mid-30s, nervous as hell. She introduced herself as Claire, said she used to know Sarah. Not friends, but close enough to know what matters. She didn't ask to come in. Just handed me a small envelope like it was about to burn her fingers. "You should see it," she muttered. And before I could ask anything else, She turned and walked off like she'd just committed a crime. I sat at the kitchen table, the envelope resting in my palm while my stomach tightened. Inside was a flash drive and a single line in shaky handwriting. "You deserve to know. Watch it all." I slid the drive into my laptop and waited. Folders loaded. Dozens of files. Audio clips, videos, screenshots. The first one hit hard. Sarah's voice crystal clear on a recorded call, laughing. "Jake still thinks Travis was the worst of it. He has no clue." Her tone wasn't even cruel, just careless. Like I was background noise. I kept clicking through the files, my heart turning colder with each one. She called me the backup, the one dumb enough to stick around. Talked about keeping leverage in case I ever got brave. There were screenshots of messages with people I didn't know, men she met while we were still together, conversations laced with flirting and strategy. One video showed her at a bar with some guy in a suit. Older, polished, not Travis. She leaned in close, kissed his neck, whispered something, then laughed and said, "Soldiers like Jake are easy to manage. Guilt keeps them on a leash." That's when it shifted. This wasn't just cheating. It was manipulation, long-term, methodical. I watched her lie, plan, and laugh at me for over an hour. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was past it. What I felt was surgical, focused, like something inside me had clicked into place. The next morning, I took the recordings and files to my lawyer. We combed through everything. Turns out Sarah had set up a shell company through a man named Ellis, a name mentioned in more than one audio clip, the same guy from the video at the bar. We tracked Ellis down through mutuals, a private contractor, ex-Intel work overseas, the kind who knew how to vanish when things got hot. He'd helped Sarah forge documents, open offshore accounts, even register fake IDs. One of them had her photo with a different name, a whole new identity in the making. She'd been planning to disappear, to leave me ruined and walk away free. That wasn't betrayal. That was warfare disguised as love. I froze the last of the accounts, flagged the fake business loans, and filed formal fraud reports. Sarah must have figured it out because her texts changed fast. "What did you do to the money?" "This isn't funny. Please talk to me." I didn't respond. I wanted silence to say what words never could. Meanwhile, I kept gathering. Surveillance footage from her last late-night meeting, financial records, every file a nail in the coffin she thought she'd built for me. Turns out she was standing in it herself. A few nights later, I caught her trying to get into the house again. Said she left her jewelry behind. Through the camera feed, I watched her try the handle, look around, whisper something angry to herself. Then she left. That was the last time I saw her in person, but I knew it wouldn't be the end. She wasn't the kind to give up, just the kind to reload. The next morning, I made one final stop. I visited her former workplace, sat down with the director, showed him 3 choice screenshots from the flash drive, fraud, embezzlement, multiple violations with their name tied to it. He didn't ask questions, just nodded slowly and promised a full internal review. I walked out knowing she was going to lose more than just her job. In the silence that followed, it became clearer than ever. This wasn't just about Sarah cheating. It was about the person she had always been when no one was looking. She hadn't just broken us. She had tried to bury me while smiling to my face. But I wasn't buried. I was awake, and I was still standing. It had been weeks since I'd last seen her face in person, but Sarah's shadow still lingered like smoke in a burned-out room. She didn't show up at the house again, but the pressure she'd tried to build was still working its way through court dates, paperwork, and the quiet, relentless grind of legal fallout. Most of her accounts were frozen, her credit locked down, and her name dragged through 2 separate fraud investigations, one by the bank, the other by her former employer. The system was slow, but it was moving. Every forged signature, every quiet theft she'd masked as paperwork was now dragging her down inch by inch. And through all of it, she still tried to reach out. Emails now since her number had been blocked. Pathetic ones. "I never meant for it to go this far. The kids deserve both parents. I'm sorry, but I didn't answer." I wasn't interested in her version of closure. Instead, I focused on the kids. They were the only real pieces left of the life I used to have, the only ones untouched by her sickness. I kept their routines solid. School drop-offs, packed lunches, story time at night. They laughed again. Not as often as before, not with the same carefree sound, but it was returning in little waves. I didn't talk to them about their mom, not in detail. I just told them she needed time and space and that we were going to be okay. They believed me, and maybe for the first time, I did too. That weekend, Julia came by. A friend, nothing more. Not yet. She'd known Sarah once in passing, back when everything looked perfect on the outside. But now she was someone who understood without asking for explanations. She brought cookies for the kids and a six-pack for me, and we sat on the back porch while the sun dipped low behind the trees. I told her just a fraction of the truth, careful not to spill too much too soon. Still, she didn't flinch. She just nodded slowly and said, "You did what you had to do." And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe around someone without feeling watched or measured. But peace, even in small doses, was fragile. The next day, I got a call from my lawyer. Sarah had filed a motion, a rushed, last-ditch attempt to gain temporary access to the house. Claimed she left important legal documents behind. Said she had no place to stay. It was a bold play, especially considering she still had pending charges. But desperation made people reckless. The court denied her within 24 hours, and the motion was sealed without a hearing. Still, the fact that she tried told me everything I needed to know. She was cornered, and her claws were coming out. That night, I checked the cameras again. Nothing. No movement. No car pulling up. No figures pacing the sidewalk. But I couldn't shake the tension building in my gut. I didn't sleep much. Just laid there with the lights off, listening to the creaks in the walls, thinking about how close she'd come to ruining everything. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way she'd turned it into a system, a strategy. She didn't just cheat. She plotted. And even with the affair exposed, even with her lies unraveling, she was still trying to claw her way back in. A few days later, the kids brought home a drawing from school. It was simple. A house, a tree, two smiling stick figures. "It's us," my daughter said. "You and me." I asked where her mom was, and she shrugged. "I didn't draw her," she said quietly. "She doesn't live here anymore." I nodded, kissed her forehead, and told her the picture looked perfect. Then I went into the garage and stared at the safe where I kept all the documentation, the flash drives, the photos, the bank records. Every damn thing she thought would disappear into smoke. It was all still there, waiting, not for revenge, not yet, but for the final move. Because I knew she'd make it. One more desperate grab, one final mistake. It was coming. I could feel it, like the last rumble before a storm breaks open. And when it did, I was going to be ready. It had been nearly a month since her last attempt to claw her way back in, and the silence that followed felt almost unnatural. Sarah had vanished from the neighborhood, her name no longer whispered by nosy neighbors or dropped in awkward conversations at school pickup. It was like she'd been scrubbed out of the picture, not erased entirely, but smudged to the point where no one knew how to talk about her anymore. The fraud investigations were still grinding through their slow, deliberate process, and her legal team had gone quiet, which meant either she couldn't pay them or they were trying to distance themselves. Either way, I didn't care. I had already stopped measuring my days by what she did. The lake house became our safe zone, a small place my uncle left behind years ago. Nothing fancy, just wood and wind and water. I took the kids there the first weekend of the new month. No cameras, no tension in the walls, no reminders of what we'd been through. Just a cooler full of burgers, the smell of charcoal smoke, and the sound of them laughing while they tried to catch frogs along the shoreline. Julia came too. She brought more food than we needed and a calm presence that didn't ask for anything in return. She didn't try to fix me, didn't try to talk through the mess. She just existed beside me like she belonged there, and maybe she did. We grilled as the sun dropped behind the trees, painting the lake in gold. The kids danced in the grass, their cheeks pink from running in the cold air. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt still. Not numb, not exhausted, just still, like something had finally stopped spinning inside me. Julia handed me a drink and smiled. "You look like a man who can finally breathe," she said. And she was right. I could. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next hit to come. That was when the message came. My phone buzzed once, screen lighting up with a number I didn't recognize, but I knew exactly who it was. Sarah. I stared at it for a second, then opened the message. "I can't take it anymore. I'm sorry." That was it. 10 words, no punctuation, like she'd sent it in a rush, like the weight of everything she'd built was finally suffocating her. I sat there holding the phone, letting the words sink in. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I'd already said everything in silence, in action, in every day I'd move forward without her. Instead, I opened my contacts, scrolled until I found her name, and deleted it. Simple, clean, no ceremony. Just gone. No more trace of the woman who once called me a fool behind my back while smiling at me across our dinner table. I stepped back onto the porch where the grill hissed and popped, and the kids were still chasing fireflies near the tree line. Julia stood by the railing, watching them, her hair caught in the last light of the evening. I walked up beside her, set my drink down, and for the first time since everything shattered, I laughed. Full, real, from the gut. She looked over at me and raised an eyebrow. "What was that for?" I shook my head and smiled. "Just finally feels good to feel something that isn't fake." The air was cool, the night crept in, and I stood there watching my kids dart through the dark like they'd never known anything but light. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need one final blow to balance the scales. She was gone, not just from the house, but from the space in my mind where her lies used to echo. She did everything she could to destroy me, and I was still here, standing, whole, laughing, and I wasn't ever going back. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.